Have you ever had a similar dream? Night, you are alone in your own apartment, standing in the corridor in pitch darkness. All the doors to the rooms are closed. You try to feel the switch with your hand to turn on the light, finally feel it, press it to the on position, but nothing happens. And you rush along the corridor looking for a door to another room to turn on the light at least there, open the door, find the unfortunate switch, but this doesn't help either. The light doesn't turn on. And the darkness begins to press in with ever-increasing force. At this moment, a clear feeling creeps into your soul that you are far from alone in the darkness, and someone's pair of eyes is closely watching you from the darkest corner of the room. And so, when the pressure on the psyche becomes truly unbearable, you wake up in a cold sweat, lying in your bed in the same darkness, jump to your feet and run to the switch. You finally turn on the blessed light, and for another half hour you cannot stop trembling throughout your whole body, and the aftertaste of the nightmare remains with you for the whole day. I had this happen. I know what is it. Periodically, once every few years, I have this dream. But sleep is not the main thing in my story. It all started when I was 12 years old. At that time, I was very interested in various mystical crap. I summoned the mated gnome, the queen of spades, and other small entities. My studies were not successful. Not once did I hear the curse words promised on the internet late at night. I didn't see any queen of spades in the mirror. No one snatched me into oblivion or cut my throat while I was sleeping. The only result of all this crap suffering was the dreams described above. After a year of fruitless attempts, I gave up all mysticism, picked myself up and turned my attention to more useful things, such as studies and sports. Time passed, and here I am, a 17-year-old teenager, left alone in the apartment due to my parents leaving for the country. To say that I was incredibly happy about this event is to say nothing. This happened extremely rarely and was accompanied by a grand party on my part. And this time was no exception. As soon as my father and mother crossed the threshold of the house and the door closed behind them, I grabbed the phone and began to gather people for a drinking session. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had 7 bodies, each of which brought with it fuel and lubricant. I won't go into details about what happened and how. I'll just say that we had a great time. The guests stayed until late in the evening. I remember it was 1:45 when one of the guys said, "Listen, today is the night of Ivan Kupala. On this day, evil spirits are especially strong. You can tell fortunes, call on different spirits. They are bound to appear today. Do you remember how you tried as a child, but nothing worked? Maybe it will work out now, huh?" The people supported this idea, and so did I, although without much enthusiasm, since firstly, I had long stopped believing in all this nonsense, and secondly, I really wanted to sleep. The alcohol I drank was taking its toll. As a result, when midnight arrived, we once tried to summon a swearing gnome, a drunken hedgehog, the queen of spades. The girls in our company especially advocated for this cause, the ghost of Stalin, Lenin, Pushkin, Baba Yaga, the brownie, and who knows who else. And what might you think? Did we call someone? Well, of course not, because all this is nonsense and obscurantism. To the accompaniment of oohs and ahs, the disappointed guests slowly began to get ready to go home. The crowds dispersed only by 1 o'clock in the morning. Having closed the door behind the last alconaut, I, without hesitating a second, stomped into my room, undressed and went to bed. I had this dream again this oppressive darkness, again this feeling of hopelessness, again this feeling that you are being watched. Awoke, sweating and shaking with fear, I jumped out of bed and ran to the light switch. That one didn't work. Then I noticed another strange thing. The darkness all around was pitch black, just like in a dream, and there was no light on the street either. Not a single street lamp worked. Not a single window was lit in the neighboring houses. Nothing was even visible in the sky. Neither the moon, nor, especially, the stars. In faint hope, I went out into the corridor and groped my way to the control panel to check the traffic jams. As expected, everything was in order with traffic jams, which means that the electricity was cut off at the level of the whole house, and maybe even the street. Waves of panic began to roll in one after another. All this was painfully reminiscent of my own dream. I desperately wanted to see at least a ray of light, even from the crummy 40-watt light bulb, but there was nowhere to get it from. Shaking and almost crying with fear, I trudged back to my room when I suddenly heard a sound behind me. I listened. Yes, it is. In the pitch silence, in addition to the beating of my own heart, I clearly heard heavy, intermittent breathing, with wheezing and whistling. Someone was breathing right down my neck. I froze in horror, but a second later my body rushed towards the door on some kind of automatic machine. But it was locked. The handle did not budge, although there were no locks on the door of my room. I pulled the handle with more force. The same result. And then I heard it, a nasty giggle, as if some crazy old woman or old man was laughing. Or a child in general, something in between. Gee-hee-hee-hee. And all this laughter alternated with heavy wheezing breathing. I began to feel for the door to another room, then to a third. Everything was locked. The bathroom and kitchen were also closed. Moreover, each of my failures was accompanied by this disgusting giggle. And so, when the door to the landing no longer gave in, I for the first time felt a very painful pinch on my leg. It was as if someone had grabbed the skin of the calf at the very edge and squeezed it with their nails. Out of surprise, I jumped to the side and fell, then crawled and began to squeeze into the corner. And then I finally saw him, or rather only his eyes, glowing in the darkness with two white dots located at the level of my shins. Then the eyes blinked and disappeared, after which they pinched my leg again, this time much more painfully, and they laughed again. As soon as I managed to get up, someone kicked my toes with a huge foot in a heavy shoe. It was then that my vocal cords emitted the first intelligible scream, accompanied by the already somewhat moronic cackle of an unknown creature. And again the fall. I howled, crawled, and cried, while my legs were subjected to more and more blows and pinches. Suddenly the creature jumped onto my shoulder and creaked right into my ear, a phrase that I will never forget. "Well, have you cast a spell?" and sank her teeth into my ear. I tried to tear it away from me, even grabbed it. To the touch it was small, furry, but covered with some kind of mucus and was squirming all over with incredible force. But I instantly let go, as the creature immediately grabbed my hands. Blows, chips, bites, scratches showered my body, leaving not a single living place on it. I can't say how long it lasted, but it seemed like an eternity. Exhausted, I practically didn't resist anymore. I just sometimes rolled on the floor, covering one side or another of my body, letting it rest. Having crawled away and huddled in another corner, I again saw those two sparkling eyes. The same giggles came from them. Eehee. It's interesting with you, although if you resisted, it would be even more interesting. Eehee. Well, shall we continue? Peepees did on the need, I begged. I would double won't do this again. Eehee hi. The monster burst out. No, that won't do. I was told to drive you to madness, and I was told to take your soul and send it to hell. I will take it and send you. Hee. Two lights approached me slowly. The creature had nowhere to rush, because its victim would not run away anywhere, which means the pleasure could be prolonged. The creature's eyes were almost in front of my nose, and I could smell the corpse's smell emanating from its mouth when the light suddenly turned on. I half sat on the floor, huddled in a corner, all torn and beaten in a pool of my own blood and urine. There was no one nearby. Apparently, the light scared the creature away. Not believing my luck, I instantly fell asleep in the same place where they wanted to kill me. When I woke up in the afternoon, the first thing I did was call my parents and tell them that I had been attacked. A few hours later, having arrived home, they, making sure that my life was not in danger, interrogated me with passion, and only after that they took me to the hospital, where I was given about 70 stitches.